Okay, I think we're rolling. Welcome back to the weekly market view with myself, the part-time trader. Today we're going to be diving deep into the world of altcoins as I talk you through my belief that we are partway through a historic downturn for the altcoin market. In fact, I'm going to be digging deep into some of the charts that I post regularly over on X through @PartTimeCharts to paint a view that, frankly, a historic correction will feel tame versus what we are about to go through in the altcoin markets over the next couple of years. It's my belief that we're about to see a decline in the price of Bitcoin to $4,000 to $5,000, which represents something like a 95% decline from where we are today, and that the altcoin market will get smashed even harder as the economy struggles to find its feet. Before we dive into the altcoin charts, I'm going to talk you through my Bitcoin thesis in a little bit more detail and touch on some of the macro factors that sit behind my view on the altcoin market. Before I get there, I just want to remind everybody that nothing you hear in this video or on anything else that I post on X or on YouTube represents financial advice. As I keep saying to you every week, I am a mere part-time trader. I'm somebody who is self-taught, somebody that has spent many years trying to learn about economics, about macro, about market fundamentals, and most importantly, in my view, about technical analysis. But the fact is, I would hate to think that anybody is making financial decisions based on the videos and the charts that I post online. These are intended for entertainment purposes only, so enjoy them. I hope you find them interesting food for thought, but definitely do not take any trades or make any financial decisions off the back of anything you hear in my videos. Right, let's dig into it. We'll kick off with Bitcoin and the broader market, because I think it's really hard actually to dig into altcoins without understanding where we are in the broader market. So technical analysis can take you so far, but I keep saying week in, week out, that you've got to have a view on the market as a whole, and that thesis should really underpin the rest of your analysis. And I suppose at the heart of my thesis is this chart here, where back in December I posted this for the first time, to much ridicule and humiliation on X. But back at the time, Bitcoin was in and around the $100,000 area, and I remember saying we were putting in a major top. This lower time frame range low, which you can see here, was going to break. It has done. We are now back in this slightly strange upward channel that I've been looking at for the past year or so. And it looks to me like we are in the very early stages of a major market meltdown. But it's not enough to look at the Bitcoin chart in isolation, because what is important is that we remember where we are in the overall cycle. And a couple of weeks ago, if you haven't seen the video from March the 7th, definitely go back to that video and treat yourself to a slightly more detailed view on the yield curve inversion that we've seen over the last couple of years, where in a nutshell, I highlighted the huge correlation that we see between periods of yield curve inversion and major market tops, which are represented by these vertical red lines going through the chart here. And ultimately what I pointed out was that every time we've seen a period of significant yield curve inversion where long-term rates minus short-term rates go negative, what follows is a top in the S&P 500 and broader equity markets. And we saw that back in 1990, we saw that at the end of the dot-com boom in the year 2000, and we saw that at the beginning of the great financial crisis in late 2007. And what followed in each of those scenarios was at least a 20% correction in markets. In fact, markets went much deeper in 2000 and 2008. And what I pointed to was the fact that this period of yield curve inversion that we're seeing here, or that we've seen over the last couple of years, was actually the deepest and longest yield curve inversion in the history of markets. And so I'm putting forward the idea, my belief, that is not a good thing, that points to major trouble on the horizon. 2 years ago, everybody was talking about yield curve inversion. Now everybody's forgotten that it exists because markets have continued to grind upwards. And I said a couple of weeks ago that you can't time the market based on yield curve inversion, but you can certainly use it as part of your analysis to figure out when markets are in a heightened place of risk. And that's where I think we've been for a long time. Risk factors have been elevated, and we've now seen markets start to respond to some of those factors. So putting Bitcoin and altcoins aside, where are we with the overall risk on markets at the moment? We'll look at this. I said back in February that the Nasdaq was printing a high, that the sweep of this high from 2024 was likely to lead to downside. I said that we were somewhere like where we were here in late 2021 before a major correction, and that once this channel broke to the downside, we would likely see continued weakness. And lo and behold, what has happened over the last 5 or 6 weeks? Well, the Nasdaq has declined from 22,000 to a low of about 19,000, so a correction of over 10% in that time. And then what I did a couple of weeks ago was zoom out to show you that if we get the correction that I'm anticipating for the Nasdaq, it is likely to be deeper and more severe than most people can imagine right now. And I drew parallels between where we were here at the end of the dot-com boom and where we are here today currently in market, suggesting that when we revisit this trend line, this time round it's going to break and we're going to see a pretty steep sell-off over a period of about 18 to 24 months, taking us back into this long-term uptrend at about $6,000. Now look, if the Nasdaq declines, as I expect it to do, by 70 to 75% in 25 and 26, and you think that during that period of time Bitcoin is going to go up, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean, honestly, there are people out there who somehow have managed to convince themselves that Bitcoin goes up no matter what. That if the market's strong, Bitcoin goes up, and if the market's weak, Bitcoin is a risk-off asset that benefits from, financial meltdown. Now, I don't think there's anything that we've seen from Bitcoin in recent years that suggests that is the case. If you look back in 2022, when the Nasdaq corrected quite significantly, Bitcoin got smashed much harder, and I believe that the same will be true again. So look, let's come on to altcoins now. But hopefully that gives you a bit of a refresher on why I'm expecting the yield curve to be a major warning sign that markets are entering a downturn, that the Nasdaq is going to enter a correction that will be on a par with those that we saw in the great financial crisis and in the year 2000, and that Bitcoin will not be immune from what is about to hit markets. What does that mean for altcoins? Well, look, if Bitcoin is the Nasdaq on steroids, then altcoins are Bitcoin on steroids, I guess. And in periods where the overall health of the cryptocurrency markets is good, many people invest in altcoins as a way to amplify and maximize their gains in the space. In periods where markets are weak and Bitcoin is correcting, altcoins have a long history of correcting much harder than Bitcoin does. So I think if you go back to 2022, you'll see that Bitcoin went through a correction of about 80% during that time. At the same time, Solana, which is widely regarded as one of the leading cryptocurrencies in the market, went through a decline of about 97%. Now, yes, there were specific factors that meant that Solana got hit harder than the rest of the market. We won't touch on those today. But overall, you look at Avax, you look at Ethereum, all of the altcoins got hit harder than Bitcoin did. And this chart here is where I believe we're heading with Solana. Now, if Solana has been one of the strongest performing assets in the crypto market since the bottom in 2022, and we saw, since this bottomed in late 2022, we saw an appreciation from bottom to top of about 30x, 33x. This is widely regarded as one of the most promising and best performing assets in the space. But look at where we are. A couple of months ago, I posted this, and I haven't touched this red squiggle, but I said that we were going to sweep the all-time high and that we would end up entering back into this accumulation range. And that's exactly what's happened. So we spent the best part of a year going sideways through this range, eventually broke out, retested it as support, pushed to the upside, swiped this all-time high. Now, at this point, if the market was really strong, we would have seen perhaps a period of consolidation and then further upside. And normally when a coin is breaking out to new highs in the crypto space, that what follows that breakout into new highs, if the market is bullish, should be a major and rapid appreciation to the upside. But I've been saying for a long time that this uptrend that goes all the way back to early 2020 and has supported price throughout the last few years, I've been arguing that that uptrend is going to act as a magnet and that price will revisit it, and when it does, it's going to break through. And so, having come back into this massive accumulation range, I am waiting for Solana to break down out of this, to head much lower, to retest this uptrend, and eventually for it to give way to much, much lower prices. Now, I'm projecting Solana bottoms somewhere in the region of about $4 to $5. I do think there's a possibility that it could head even lower than that, but $4 to $5 feels like we've got some solid support down here. I expect us to take out the lows of 2022. Most people will be shocked by where we end up, but in a world where the Nasdaq is crashing 70 to 75%, in a world where Bitcoin is heading back to $4,000, potentially $5,000, this doesn't seem too crazy to me. What else can we use to really build a picture of where Solana is at the moment? I've pointed to this chart a few times. Now, when it's incredible to me that people just scream alt season all the time. People are praying for those periods where everything goes up, new money floods into the market, and exponential gains are delivered, across the entire crypto space. And those periods are normally very brief and they are rare. In fact, if you look back over the last 10 years, we've only seen a period like that twice. Once was in 2017-18, and the second was in the year 2021, where we saw some of the moves represented on this chart, where Solana just absolutely tore to the upside and produced life-changing gains to anybody that managed to catch it. I don't think now is one of those periods. I think far from it. I think we're on the precipice of a crash that will make 2022 look like child's play. And I point to this chart when people are screaming about alt season. I point to this chart because if Solana is one of the leading projects in the space, if it's one of the coins that people are most bullish on, then why, having had a year of reaccumulation or distribution, depending on how you look at it, why has price broken to the downside? Why have we seen a breakdown in Solana versus Bitcoin over the last 6 weeks or so? I think this points to much bigger problems for Solana and gives us a clue as to where the overall altcoin market is at the moment. And this chart here is one that I've posted quite a few times on X, and I thought it would be worth us dwelling on this for just a second. Look, I've been bearish on altcoins for a long time, and in fact, since early 2024, particularly low cap altcoins, I was saying they were going to get smashed, and many of them got absolutely obliterated last year, despite the fact that Bitcoin was pushing to the upside. Yes, I know there were winners, particularly some of the memes that were run on Solana. I think very few people actually catch those moves in size. The coins that people were looking to from the last cycle did not perform, on the whole. There were a few exceptions during 2024. And I've been looking for a break to the downside for this chart here, which is others, so smaller cap cryptocurrencies versus Bitcoin. So this is the price of the low cap altcoin market versus Bitcoin. And what you can see here is that in periods where this chart is going up, altcoins are strong and are delivering exponential gains, not just in US dollar terms, but also relative to the price of Bitcoin. So again, 2017 into 2018 saw a massive period of appreciation. And the second that we saw was late 2020 into the spring and later on into the latter part of 2021. Since then, altcoins have been in decline versus Bitcoin. I was temporarily bullish on this breakout here back in November, and I actually remember being really shocked by the strength that was shown when on the daily chart we started to see a breakout of this long-term downtrend. But the moment that price got slammed back underneath this trend line, I said, this is a big warning sign, guys. And since then, you can see I haven't touched this blue squiggle for the last couple of months, but since then price has begun to follow what I believe is a path to a bottom in 2026. And at the moment I see absolutely zero reason to be bullish on altcoins, particularly versus Bitcoin. I mean, look, this uptrend was held multiple times before breaking down last month. We're now holding beneath this key support resistance zone, and I believe that at some point in the near future, over the next couple of weeks, we are starting our descent further down, ultimately with a view to bottoming out in the second half of 2026. So at the moment, I look at Solana, I see absolutely no reason to be bullish. I look at the altcoin market, low cap altcoins versus Bitcoin, I see no reason to be bullish. And then I start to look at other projects like Litecoin, for example. And again, this chart, just really cements my view that there is nothing to be excited about in the altcoin space. Look, Litecoin has spent nearly 2 years building this accumulation range, only to break out in early 2025 and then very quickly get pulled back under the range high. And I've seen stuff like this play out so many times in the market where everybody's looking at the same chart. Everybody a few months ago was looking at Litecoin and seeing potentially major upside for the cryptocurrency that is known as the sort of silver to Bitcoin's gold, or at least it was 7 or 8 years ago. I think that moniker has probably been challenged by the market. But everybody was looking at this thinking, this is Litecoin's time. We're going to see a big breakout and we're going to see a move that catches everybody off guard. And to be fair, when this breakout happened and we started to hold, I kept saying to everybody, there's no cause to be bearish for Litecoin at the moment. And we could see a sort of XRP style move up into the highs that we put in 2021 and in 2018. What's happened since though, and I've been telegraphing this over the last few weeks, is that if we were to break back into this accumulation range, I do not think that's a good sign for Litecoin, and that's exactly what's happened. And I see absolutely no reason to be bullish on a coin that has spent 2 years building a base and then has suffered a major failed breakout. This was Litecoin's time to shine, and frankly it did not manage to. And then there are loads of other examples. I mean, look, I'm going to go through half a dozen or so today, because I know how much lots of you care about the altcoin market and want to know where we're heading in the future. But there are so many charts that I could show you where key support and resistance zones have given way, and when there is and where there is absolutely nothing standing between the market and much lower prices. And this is Matic, or Polygon as it's now known. Again, a cryptocurrency that is very much out of fashion. Not many people care about Polygon. I'd argue that that's probably a product of price action more than anything else. I don't think people fundamentally care about Solana, but it's just number go up, I like to buy. But you look at this chart, right, and there are some telltale signs here that price is heading much lower. A couple of them are that everybody expected this breakout of this sort of symmetrical triangle back in early 24 to lead to much higher prices. And in fairness, in 2024, the market was relatively strong. So the fact that this breakout didn't hold and price came back under the downtrend and back under this key support and resistance zone. I was flagging here that this is a major warning sign. And then we got a breakdown back into these lows. We swept the 2022 low. Price reclaimed, came back up and rallied back into this major support and resistance zone. And again, when we got rejected and we ended up back under this big downtrend, that was the point at which here I started warning that we are probably on the precipice of a much bigger move to the downside. And since then, lo and behold, the market has declined. The price of Matic has declined by about 60%. I believe, unfortunately for Matic holders, that is just the beginning. If you look at what we've got here, right, you've got this hugely inefficient move to the upside where there is absolutely no structural support for price whatsoever. And having broken back into this zone in pink, I think when Bitcoin turns to the downside, we're going to see a really rapid decline in the value of Matic, eventually coming into this region of about 1 cent. And I say that because I just can't see how, if I'm right and Bitcoin goes to $4,000 to $5,000, I just can't see how something like Matic survives, frankly. So I expect it to get absolutely hammered, and I think you will see something similar play out across lots of other altcoins. And this is Mantra, probably the most under the radar crypto project in history. Very few people have been talking about this over the last year or so, but if you look back, we put this huge bump and run bottom in, and we actually, I mean, it's shocking when you pull up the numbers from bottom to top. Mantra went up something like 500x in the space of a year and a half. Now, I caught none of this move. I was not invested in Mantra. In fact, I didn't even have the chart on my radar. But it just shows you why this market is valued so highly by retail investors. Because for many people, if you catch one of these moves, this is looked at as an incredible way to deliver outsized gains. Unfortunately, I don't think we're in a position where we're going to see more of that over the coming period. And I believe that this top trend line here is pointing to a sort of natural topping area for Mantra. And I believe that price is going to decline by about 95%, taking us back into this key support and resistance zone here at about 23 cents. Now, it's possible that things could go even worse. Price could go even lower if things get really bad for altcoins, or even worse, I should say. But my base case is that we've topped out here, and despite the relative strength that we've seen in Mantra in recent months, we are likely to see this decline in line with the rest of the market. And I'll just whiz through a couple of others for you. Look, this is Fetch, right? And this, if you remember 2024, as the AI boom was gripping equity investors and we saw exponential gains on things like Nvidia, we saw all of a sudden a real demand for AI coins in the crypto space, and Fetch really benefited from that period. Again, huge gains just in a short period of time. So, you know, if you look at this in a relatively short period of time, in a space of mere months, 15x was delivered to investors that caught this bottom here. But since then, I've been saying, look, I just don't like the look of this uptrend. If you look back here and you look back at price action from the last cycle, this uptrend that held for Fetch all of the way through the bull market eventually gave way, and that led to really steep declines. And I think we've put in a similar top, and we're now seeing the weakness that I said would be in the market if this broke. Excuse me, got a bit of a cold this week. So look, this, I mean, I called this. You can go back and look at some of my posts back in December and January. I said that I didn't like the fact we were revisiting this trend line so soon, that I expected a break to the downside. And lo and behold, I mean, this is not a small move, guys. You know, we're talking about from this area in the sort of 150 region back in December, in the space of about 3 months, we've declined by about 70%. You know, we now sit about 66% down from this area. And I think this support zone here is only holding temporarily. I think we're going much lower. Again, another one of the charts that I've posted a lot. And this is where I start to get optimistic. So yes, I'm being very doom and gloom. I expect altcoins to get hit really, really hard. And they are already. I mean, anybody that calls me crazy and says that I don't know what I'm doing, you know, like go back to this chart, right? When we were here, I was calling for a bit more upside from here, $37. I called for us to revisit the top of this channel and then for there to be a sharp sell-off. And what has happened? You know, we put a top in at $55. Since then, Avax is down by 2/3. So people keep stopping by to say, you're mad, you don't know what you're doing, you're a part-time trader, you're useless. And I just keep pointing back at the charts and going, are you watching the same market? I mean, honestly, are you looking at this and thinking this is positive for people that are holding Avax? They're happy to be 75% down, you know, 70% down over the last couple of months. I just think it's crazy. And it's my view that we are nowhere near a bottom. I think this price sell-off is going to continue. I expect, and people will be shocked when I say this, but I expect that Avalanche is going to trade back in the region of about $1 in late 2026, 2027. And I will be there with a big pot of cash waiting to buy into this market if that happens. Now, I said that I would also be optimistic, and I'll take you back here briefly. Look, the reason I'm optimistic is that if you're not all in, if you're on the right side of the market and you're piling cash, you're building your cash basis over the coming sort of 18, 24 months, I believe that we will see historic buying opportunities. So for every person that loses out in a major downturn, somebody else is waiting to take advantage of that downturn and the fear that often leads to capitulation at the lows. And I am planning to buy in this $1 region before what I think will be an unprecedented bull market for altcoins. And I actually think, in the same way that this cycle, people are disappointed that we've seen no real return for alts, you know, no significant appreciation in altcoins versus Bitcoin. There's been no alt season. It's caught a lot of people off guard, and it's why loads of people are still bullish on alts, because they can't believe that the cycle tops out without alt season. But I believe that that is the case. I also believe that when the market bottoms, people will be surprised by the pace at which altcoins appreciate versus Bitcoin. And so when something like Avax puts in a bottom in late 2026, I believe that it's going to, over the subsequent years, probably 2 to 3 years, I believe it is going to perform much, much better than Bitcoin does. And that is a sign that the market is just moving in unpredictable ways. I mean, who could have foreseen a market where Bitcoin goes up to 110,000 and so many altcoins are trading well off their all-time high? That's what we're seeing now, and I think the reverse will be true when the market bottoms. People will be waiting for Bitcoin to run before altcoins, and they'll get caught off guard as altcoins boom from 27 through to 29.30. And what gives me confidence that that's the case? Well, look, first of all, look at this is Avax versus BTC, right? What is there to be bullish about here? You look at this chart, these lows, this support zone has held these lows going all the way back to January 2021. And then at the beginning of this year, that support zone broke to the downside, just as I said it would back at the end of last year. And we're now starting to drift towards the bottom boundary of what looks like a descending broadening wedge, which is one of my favorite patterns, and there are loads of examples. I mean, you go back to Solana, you see the same pattern, this sort of broadening descending wedge. On Avax BTC, I believe we're seeing the same pattern play out in a much larger time frame, which means eventually I expect the move to the upside to be much more powerful than anything we've seen for a long time in the altcoin market. So I'm expecting us again to bottom in 2026, and I think what follows will be a period of incredible performance for altcoin markets. And from a technical standpoint, this suggests that something as big as a 100x move versus Bitcoin is possible. Now, lots of people will look at this and say, well, what have you based that on? You can argue about whether there's validity in this kind of measured move, which is how you measure the upside target for a descending broadening wedge. You take the top of the wedge and you measure down to the bottom, which I expect to be somewhere in this region, and then you can expect off the breakout a move of similar magnitude to the upside. Now, you can argue whether that's going to happen. I mean, we didn't quite see that in Solana, but even if we don't get that on Avax BTC, even if price simply just goes back somewhere near the previous highs, you're talking about a 27, 28x move versus Bitcoin. Now, if Bitcoin is also moving at the same time, you quite quickly realize why I believe that going back to the previous all-time high for Avax will be no challenge at all in 28, 29. So if we get this move down into the $1 to $2 region, I firmly believe that that is a generational, a lifetime opportunity that I will be trying to take advantage of. And then I see other opportunities in the altcoin market. So again, I'm going to whiz over this really quickly, but Joe is a decentralized exchange that runs on Avax. I'm thinking ahead and I'm planning, albeit 18 to 24 months out, if Avax is going to be a big runner versus Bitcoin in the next cycle, then how can I really capitalize on that? And I think some of these ecosystem coins on the Avax network represent really, really good value if we see the kind of decline that I'm anticipating. And again, another example of an altcoin chart that I just think has screamed downside for such a long time. Sorry, the cold's starting to get the better of me now, but we saw this big breakout back in December of Hathor versus US dollar. And as we tucked back under the breakout, I remember saying to everybody, this doesn't look bullish to me. I'm worried that this means serious downside. And I hopped out of my longs here. And lo and behold, where are we? We're down really significantly, about 75% since then. And I think we're heading much lower, guys. I'm sorry to say it. If you're invested in altcoins, good luck to you. I can't see anything bullish in the short term for the altcoin market. And I eventually expect that coins like Hathor, like Avax, represent major buying opportunities. I mean, look, this is a long way off, right? Difficult to draw a chart and predict price action for the next 3 to 4 years. And I know lots of people look at some of my charts like this and think it makes me crazy. But I have seen this kind of bump and run price action. If you go back to Mantra, it was a similar pattern, right? On a shorter time frame, but we had this lead in, this big bump to the downside, eventually a break of the downtrend and a major move up. And I think many altcoins are probably building a similar chart. And certainly if we get something like Hathor, which is a promising layer one, excuse me, if we get a move that takes us down 95% from where we are today, and if Bitcoin looks like it's bottoming, I will be trying to find opportunities to invest in altcoins, but not before late 26, early 27, in my view. Now, I'll keep you posted if things change, and they can, obviously. If we see strength, I won't be blind to it. I've got points of invalidation on a lot of these charts. But at the moment, sorry to say, if you're invested in altcoins, I think you're in for a rough time. And it's going to be at least a year before I even think about touching the cryptocurrency market. But look, I should probably wrap it up there. I've probably gone on a bit longer than I thought I would. It's been great to be with you today. I hope you found some of this useful. I would be happy to take requests from people if there are charts that you'd like me to cover in future videos. In the meantime, do hit that subscribe button if you found anything that I've talked through today interesting or useful to you. And I look forward to seeing all of you again soon. Take care, everyone.